If there was a crisis a few years ago, and I take your point that 1 million is certainly a lot of people, it's plummeted to 170,000. The population of this country is 70 million, increased by 0.25% last year.
Numbers that we're seeing,
the crisis is finished, Mr. Jenrick. The crisis is over.
It has not. It has not. The numbers that we are seeing today are still unprecedented in historical terms.
But they're plummeting under Labour.
Well,
so your whole argument, we will reduce immigration, Labour's already doing it. Look, they're succeeding where your former party failed.
No, well, they are succeeding. They're doing more than the last Conservative government did, for sure. But that is not good enough. That's not success. Success is bringing this right down.
But they are. It's gone from 1 million to 170,000 in 3 years. If that continues,
I'm sorry.
If that continues in a couple of years' time, it will be the numbers you want to see.
Well, come back to me if the numbers were zero. They're not today. They are far higher.
What is up, everybody? Harry here. This is Ben Kentish on LBC with Robert Jenrick, Reform UK's Deputy Leader, covering social care staffing, a clip of a Reform councillor admitting she hasn't read the council constitution. And Farage's claim that Russian hackers leaked details of his £5 million gift. That hacking claim is real and was reported by multiple outlets, but it's also been directly challenged by digital forensics experts as unsubstantiated, which is worth knowing before Jenrick's answer here. Let's get into what actually holds up. Get subscribed if that's useful to you.
Should be leaving.
Well, you can start with all the illegal migrants in the country.
But they're not included in these figures.
Get them out of the country as quickly as possible.
But this is legal migrants.
And then of those people who were let in legally under the last government, the so-called Boris wave, we want to get those low-wage, low-skilled migrants out of the country because they are not net contributors. They're people, if they stay here,
carers, nurses.
If they stay here for the rest of their lives, then these people are going to be costing you and I, the British taxpayer, hundreds of thousands of pounds each. In fact, we've calculated this, and the cost of the Boris wave, if it's not
But these
arrested,
are the people that are keeping our NHS running, Mr. Jenrick. These are the people that are caring for our elderly and our disabled.
Well,
you want them to leave.
We've got almost 10 million people in this country who are either out of work claiming benefits,
but they're not qualified as nurses or carers.
Well, let's get them qualified then. Let's get them qualified. You'd rather a Brit was on the scrap heap. There's a million...
No, I'd rather the person that cared for my elderly parents wanted to be doing the job and was qualified to do it, than someone who'd be forced into it when they had no skills to do so.
Firstly, I think that's an insult to the Brits who are working in this sector. 80% of the people working in social care in this country are British people, and I want more Brits to be doing it. There's 1 million young people at the moment who are not in work. They're not even in education or training. That number is set to rise. We've got to get those people, British people, off welfare and into the workplace, not just reach for this easy lever of foreign labour coming into the country that undercuts the wages of British workers, and it puts massive pressure on housing, on getting a doctor, getting a dentist, and the social pressure of our country changing before our very eyes. That is what reform
What do you mean
would do.
the social pressure?
Well, it's obviously impossible to successfully integrate millions of people in such a short period of time. For most of our country's history, we were a country marked by net emigration. More people were leaving than were coming in. It's only from the late 80s and 90s that more people were coming in every year. Then it was in the tens of thousands. The kind of numbers that we've had in recent years have made it very, very difficult to have a strong sense of national identity. And that's what Reform believes in.
If there was a crisis a few years ago, and I take your point that 1 million is certainly a lot of people, it's plummeted to 170,000. The population of this country is 70 million, increased by 0.25% last year.
The numbers that we're seeing...
The crisis is finished, Mr. Jenrick. The crisis is over.
It has not. It has not. The numbers that we are seeing today are still unprecedented in historical terms.
But they're plummeting under Labour.
Well, they're
your whole argument, we
as a
will
result
reduce
of
immigration, Labour's already doing it.
Look,
they're succeeding where your former party failed.
No, well, they are succeeding. They're doing more than the last Conservative government did, for sure. But that is not good enough. That's not success. Success is bringing this right down.
But they are. It's gone from 1 million to 170,000 in 3 years. If that continues...
I'm sorry.
If that continues in a couple of years' time, it will be the numbers you want to see.
Well, come back to me if the numbers were zero. They're not today. They are far higher than they've been in most of our history as a country. We've got to get them down right the way. And I want to get all the illegal migrants out of the country. You know, it's completely outrageous that we've got at least 1 million, maybe more. Estimates vary.
Boat crossings are down 40% as well in the last year. Labour's doing a good job of this.
70,000 people, mostly young men, are broken into our country under this Labour government. Undocumented men. They're putting immense pressure on our country. They're now being housed in bedsits on people's streets. You know, do you want that on the street next to you? Well, most people in our country don't. That has to stop. It's clearly not going to stop under this Labour government. More people broke into the country over the weekend. The weather is good. It's quiet in the Channel today. Maybe more will come. Only reform has the strength and the policies that are needed to actually tackle that, end the farce of the small boats crisis.
We've been talking a lot about what reform would do in power. I just want to play you a clip of what happens when reform gets into power in Kirklees, in local government. Have a listen to this.
I don't understand the Constitution. I have not had sufficient time to read that as yet. I don't understand what standing orders are, what they're made up of, nor do I understand what an amendment is. I understand that Councillor Bolt does and is a well-respected councillor because he actually knows all of those rules. But I suggest there is a possibility that we might vote for something that we don't understand at the moment. And whereas ignorance is not a defence, risk should be mitigated.
Is that what happens when reform wins power? They turn up not having done their homework, not having bothered to do the basics about the job that they've been elected to hold?
No, look, I don't know the clip you just played me, but it sounds like sounds like you're trying to mock a decent
I'm not
person
mocking anybody,
who's been elected as a councillor.
That's not a good look. She's your local group leader in Kirklees.
Well, look,
she's had 2 weeks and she hasn't bothered to read the Constitution of the council she wants to lead.
There are new people who've been elected to councils who are not from the old political parties, who come from all walks of life, bring common sense to the job. And yes, some of them will take a bit of time to learn the ropes, but they bring a lot of fresh thinking as well. Overall, if you look at reform councils, they're performing extremely well. You know, if you look at council tax, reform councils are increasing council tax less than their Conservative or their Labour peers. And that's only after being in place for a year or more. You know, I'm very confident that the new councils that we've just taken over
are going to do well.
If people really liked
a reform representative aspiring to lead a council 2 weeks after being elected ought to have read the rules of the council she seeks to lead.
Well, if people really liked their local Labour or Conservative council, why have they ditched them all? People are voting in their droves for reform because they know that reform run councils well, that they bring fresh thinking and common sense to the job.
And I put it to you, that clip is not how anybody should behave.
You think that Labour and Conservative council will professionally run?
I'm simply saying that having turned up
Birmingham
to a meeting,
City Council
2
almost
weeks
bankrupt.
after being elected, saying I haven't read the rules but make me council leader is not a good look.
Using one example, there were 5,000 council candidates at the last election. Overall, reform councils are clearly doing a good job, and that's why people are voting for reform. The last council elections, just 2 weeks or so ago, were very clear. We won thousands of councillors across the country.
You're not going to get into power nationally and turn up and say, well, I don't know, I haven't read the rules, don't know what's going on,
well,
really.
It sounds like what this Labour government did. They turned up without any plan. Then they'll smash the gangs. Well, that didn't work out, did it? Won't increase taxes.
Well, the
Rachel
small boat
Reeves,
crossings are down 42%, so perhaps
she increased taxes by £26 billion and rising. Andy Burnham says,
let's come back
I don't need to bother about the bond
there are
markets.
Concerns about what reform would actually look like in power. And I'd put it to you, just based on that clip and others, that some of your local government representatives are not doing much to reassure those concerns that people have.
No, I fundamentally disagree. Look, I understand the game that the media wants to play. You want to criticise reform, but it's clearly not working.
I don't want to criticise anybody.
It's clearly not working with the general
interpretation of that clip.
It's clearly not working with the public because the public are voting for reform. They did it at the local elections.
That doesn't mean we shouldn't hold you accountable.
They see reform in local government. They want more of it.
That doesn't mean that accountability and scrutiny aren't important when it comes to what your representatives are doing. Very final question. Nigel Farage claims today that the disclosure about his £5 million gift from a crypto billionaire in Thailand was obtained by the Russian state hacking his phone. If he believes that's the case, presumably he'll be referring that to the police and the security services.
Well, that's for Nigel, but yeah, it is a very serious situation, and I would like to think that the police and the security services helped him in this. It shows the amount of pressure that he's under, both in terms of physical threats and indeed, we've seen cyber threats now.
It's a big allegation.
And I'd like to believe that the government and the authorities would do more to support him. You know, I've for a long time thought it was wrong.
He will be referring this matter
that you'd have to ask Nigel himself. That's obviously his own.
It'd be very strange if he believes he'd been hacked by Vladimir Putin. It'd be very strange if he didn't see further.
If you're trying to turn this around and make it sound like Nigel's the one who's doing something wrong,
not at all. I'm just asking whether he'll be referring.
He's the victim in this. You know, he's somebody who's under a lot of physical threats. He's also under, as you've seen for this, cyber threats, including from, in this case, hostile states like potentially Russia. Incidentally, it also blows apart this silly argument that's been put around by the Labour Party that somehow Nigel is close to Putin. It sounds like it's Russia that was actually trying to hack into his emails and phone to actually cause him personal harm.
I'm not disputing whether or not he's the victim. He says he is. He's told the Mail on Sunday that.
Well, he clearly
Given
is.
he's told the media, I'm just asking whether he'll be reporting it to MI5 as well.
Well, look, he's had to, because he doesn't get any help from the authorities, he's had to go.
Watch the Russian hacking claim closely, because it's real in the sense that it was genuinely reported and genuinely disputed in the sense that matters most for evaluating it. Farage's team did tell the Mail on Sunday that counter-espionage experts found evidence of state-linked spear phishing targeting his phone, email, and bank accounts, and Farage himself publicly stated the actions were deeply concerning. That's not something Kentish invented, but independent national security and digital forensics experts, including a professor of digital forensics interviewed by the Register, publicly called the claim unsubstantiated, noting that neither the phishing message nor the malware code that would actually prove state involvement had been produced or verified independently, and that disguising the apparent source of a hack is technically straightforward. So Kentish's skeptical line of questioning, asking whether Farage would actually refer this to the police and security services, isn't manufacturing doubt out of nothing. It's reflecting genuine, expert-level skepticism about a claim that remains asserted rather than independently verified. The exchange about legal migration numbers deserves precision too. Kentish's figure that net legal migration has fallen substantially from around 1 million to roughly 170,000 tracks the real sharp decline in official net migration statistics through 2024 and 2025 following policy tightening, a trend genuinely underway under the current government. Jenrick's response, that the numbers are still unprecedented in historical terms, is also fair as a separate claim. Even after that sharp fall, current net migration levels remain well above pre-2002 historical norms, so both figures can be accurate, depending on which specific comparison point you're using, the recent peak or the longer historical baseline. The Kirklees Council clip is worth taking at face value as exactly what it appears to be, a real, directly recorded counselor stating she hadn't yet read the council's standing orders or understood what an amendment is. Jenrick's response that this shouldn't be used to mock the decent person learning the ropes, and his broader point that new councillors from outside traditional party structures often need time to learn procedurals. Detail is a fair defense in the abstract. What it doesn't fully address is Kentish's actual, narrower question whether someone should have familiarized themselves with basic procedural rules before seeking to lead the council. Specifically, which is a more targeted critique than a general point about learning curves for any new councillor, where the closing narration moves from analysis into prediction, is the forecast that reforms wheels are going to come off before the next general election. That's a specific political forecast, not a fact established by this interview, and is worth treating as one commentator's expectation rather than something this exchange demonstrates either way. It's worth naming what makes the hacking exchange different from a normal factual dispute, separate from whether it's ultimately true. Most claims in these breakdowns can eventually be checked against a verifiable record, a statistic, a legal document. A direct quote, this one currently can't because the specific technical evidence that would settle it either way, the phishing message or the malware itself, hasn't been made public or independently examined by outside experts. That's a genuinely different epistemic situation from most of what gets debated in political interviews. And it's worth being honest that unresolved and currently unverifiable is sometimes the most accurate description available, rather than reaching for a confident conclusion in either direction just because the claim is dramatic. If breakdowns like this are useful to you, get subscribed to Harry Unfiltered, and I'll keep checking the specifics as carefully as this deserves.